Hey everybody, welcome to episode 7 of Fitness and Money, Maximizing Your Health and Wealth. First 6 episodes we did chest and back. We decided to do that because very important body groups. We also said we were going to work from the head down all the way through, and we're going to continue to keep doing that. Again, chest and back, real important that you work your back, and we went over why. Things like, posture, a lot of us are with our phones and we're doing this or we're hunching over. Very important that we have a strong back. Very important that we have a strong core. So you kind of like to think of your chest and your back as balancing each other out. You don't want to just work all chest. You don't want to work just all back. You see a lot of people in the gym and they're doing chest, and not doing as much for the back. And I think that that's a big problem from a development standpoint and from a possible chronic illness injury type standpoint. So today we're going to be doing shoulders, and we're going to be covering 3 exercises. One of them is going to be a compound exercise, which means we're going to be involving the entire shoulder muscle. The other 2 are going to be more isolated exercises, which will work specific heads of the muscle. There's 3 heads, and this is not to go into long detail. There's 3 heads of the shoulder muscle. You have your anterior, which is in the front. You have your medial, which is on the side, and you have your posterior deltoid muscle, which is in the back. In theory, they should all be developed equally. The anterior deltoid gets a lot of work when you do any type of pressing movement, so we are not going to be doing anything specific for the anterior deltoid muscle other than the compound exercise, which will work all 3 heads to some degree. We're going to be doing a specific isolation exercise for the medial head of the deltoid, and then we're going to be doing one today for the posterior head of the deltoid, which really gets neglected when people are working their shoulders. So also a couple of really quick things. This is a work in progress. As I said before, we're trying to concentrate on content rather than the surroundings. We are trying to improve things. We have some additional lighting. I hired my wife on as producer, so she's now here working with me as well. She actually made a comment to me as she was watching one of the previous videos, and she said, "Hey, how come you're always wearing your wind pants and nothing else?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm at home and I'm just wearing my wind pants and a tank top." So decided to put on some gear that's not wind pants. Got some shorts on. So honestly, most of the time I actually work out in my cargo shorts and either a tank top or a regular shirt or whatever. So enough of that. The other thing that I wanted to touch on was, you may have noticed in a couple of the previous videos, later videos, I was just wearing my socks. Don't do that. That's a bad thing. We don't want to drop weights on our toes or our feet. That'll bring things to a halt really quickly. So I'm going to be wearing sneakers from now on. No more coming down without some type of foot protection. All right, so with that being said, we're going to work and again, long name, we're going to be doing seated posterior lateral raises. And this is going to work the back of that shoulder muscle. I'm going to do it the right way first, and then I'm going to show you how people tend to do it when they're using too much weight. Now, with isolation exercises like this one or any isolation exercise, you're not trying to hoist up the maximum amount of weight. You're trying to do it with a weight that's comfortable for you, where you can actually isolate and feel that particular portion of the muscle working, and that's what we want to do with this posterior seated lateral raise. So we're going to start with our feet together. I have my power blocks here, but again, You can use dumbbells, you can use kettlebells. You will be able to use straps and bands on this to some degree, and we'll go over that later. But for right now, we're going to start in this position, feet together, bent over like this. We don't want to be completely bent over. We don't want to be up like this. Right here is about the right position to be starting in. So what we want to do is we want to raise the weight as such. And we want to bring it back down in. We want to raise the weight as such. Bring it back down in. One more time. And back down in. So what that will do is that will particularly isolate the back portion of the shoulder muscle. So if you want to look at it this way, you have the anterior portion of your shoulder. You have here, which is the medial, and then back here is the posterior. The only real way to get the posterior is to bend over and actually go like this. That'll pretty much isolate that muscle. As you can see, when I have these up here, you can actually see anterior, medial, posterior. So that's what we're working today, the posterior. Now I'm going to do it the wrong way. And a lot of people in the gym, they want to hoist up too much weight, so they tend to do it the wrong way, and either injuring their shoulder or injuring a different body part associated with the shoulder tie into the chest. It's just not a good situation when you take an isolation exercise and you start trying to use a ton of weight with it where your form goes crazy. Again, we're all about form here. We want to do things correctly with the right form to get the right result. This might be somebody in the gym doing it incorrectly. They will raise their chest off of their lap. We absolutely don't want to do that. The other thing that we don't want to do is we don't want to come out straight. We don't want our elbows locked. We absolutely don't want to do that. That'll put all kinds of tension on your elbow, all kinds of tension up here. If you noticed when I was doing them, we want to go like this. My elbows are bent, and my right here is absolutely locked. I'm not moving my torso up and down. So that's today's exercise. Next week we're probably going to do one for the medial deltoid, and that'll be one that I'll be doing standing up, and we'll be rotating things a certain way, and you'll see how we're going to work this portion as opposed to this portion of the deltoid muscle. All right, so let's pick up where we left off last episode with the financial discussion. So we talked about, up to this point, we've talked about, paying yourself first. We've talked about mutual funds. We've talked about IRAs. We've talked about different types of IRAs, traditional versus Roth. Where we left off was when traditional IRAs are valuable versus Roth IRAs and vice versa. So I'm going to keep this kind of global, and I'm not going to get into a ton of nitty-gritty detail on this, but if you're a younger person, I would recommend a Roth IRA. And the Roth IRA I recommend because of some of those benefits that we talked about last episode, namely being that when you go to draw that money out at a much later date, when you're ready to retire, you are not going to have to pay taxes on that money because it came out of your net paycheck, so it's already been taxed. So that example again, if you call up and you say, Mr. Broker, I'd like you to send me $1,000, they're going to send you that $1,000 because it's already been taxed. As opposed to the traditional IRA, where if you call up Mr. Broker when you're 59 and a half and you can get that money, they're going to say, okay, how much tax are you going to get taken out of that $1,000 because we let you use that money and accumulate that money all these years without paying taxes on it. And that's because it came out, again, from our gross income, deferred, non-taxed, versus Roth, which comes out of your net income and it's taxed. Let's talk about different stages of your life and planning purposes and where both are beneficial versus the other. If you're someone who files short form on your taxes, you're probably going to want to go with the Roth 401k or the Roth IRA. Where the traditional IRA and 401k become very beneficial is if you're able to itemize. If you're able to write off things like school taxes, property taxes, any other type of charitable giving, any other type of thing that you can itemize and you can write off, that's where the traditional 401k and traditional IRA are going to be beneficial, and I'll tell you why. Because when it's taken off of your gross income, that is a dollar for dollar deduction when you itemize. It brings your income down. So hypothetically, let's say that you have $100,000 worth of income, either yourself or between you and your spouse, and you have contributed $20,000 to a traditional 401k or an IRA, that $20,000 is going to immediately come off, so that when you write that off, your income is really going to now be $80,000 instead of $100,000. With the Roth, that doesn't happen because it doesn't come off the top, it comes off of the net. So again, there's different times in people's lives when they might want to do either or the other. You could always split it up. You could always do half Roth, you could always do half traditional. Again, during those phases when you're making probably the maximum amount of money in your career, maybe you have a big house, maybe you have a mortgage, you've got kids, you've got all different kinds of things that will allow you to file that long form on your taxes. Traditional 401ks and traditional IRAs make a lot of sense there. If you're not in that position, I would go with the Roth, because again, Uncle Sam is not going to come to you when you're able to get your money out and say, oh, by the way, I want my 12%, 20%, 24%. It'll all depend on what tax bracket you're in at that point in time. So, and the other thing is, which we talked about last episode, was those required minimum distributions, which they tell you you're going to have to take out this money whether you want it or not, and that's going to be at a certain percentage based on your age and what your longevity is, so to speak, and there's a calculation that they use. So I guess I'm kind of leaning toward the Roth because it's very pure. Everything that you put in, you will get back out. You will be accumulating a smaller balance going forward, but again, at the end of the road, I think it's probably worth it. Okay, so I also said that last week I brought down my protein shake and told you what I put in it basically on a daily basis. I said that I was going to show you the protein powder that I use. And that protein powder is right here. It's a company called On Optimum Nutrition, Gold Standard 100% isolate. This particular protein is what you would call a clean protein. If you look at the ingredients, there are very, very few fillers, binders. It's basically a clean protein. You could go and you can look at other proteins on the shelf, and you will see things like maltodextrin and carrageenan and guar gum and probably 5 other things where you can't pronounce the name. So I would say this would be the protein powder that you would want to use. I do think protein powders are absolutely essential because I don't think that enough of us get a protein on a daily basis. So I think that this is essential to put in your protein powder. You can mix it with milk, whatever you'd like to do. So that's pretty much a wrap for this particular episode. Hope you got something out of it. If you did, please hit the like button. Subscribe if you'd like to. And next episode, we're going to continue on with shoulders, and we're going to do lateral raises standing, which are going to work the medial portion of the deltoid. Thank you, and hope you tune in again.